worked with you guys in so many different ways, and I really value your input on how to make a difference, being a voice in our community, and all of you value education to the utmost, support that you know it makes a difference in our community. So I wanted you to have a voice in this conversation. I think our goal is to maybe have a bigger conversation in the fall to bring in, I know you reached out to all the legislators and the senators and everybody, but they were all busy at the moment, which is understandable.
Yeah, tail end of the budget season. So.
Yeah. So Whitney, do you want to introduce yourself and a little bit about what you're wanted to have the conversation about and what were you? Okay, I thought the fire alarm's going on. Not a good thing. PTSD, sorry. But sorry, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nadine, and thank you all so much for coming here today. I have my computer out because my little portion is slightly less scripted. I would love to walk through the piece of paper in front of you, which is the latest poll results that were conducted throughout the state of Pennsylvania. I will be presenting this information on behalf of the Early Learning PA community, so that incorporates 4 different coalitions: Pre-K for PA, Start Strong, Childhood Begins at Home, and Thriving PA. And so we all work together collectively. There's more than a dozen organizations throughout all of Pennsylvania that works to help elevate the needs of folks like you that work in the field, and then supporters of the community as well, and anyone really that cares about children, anyone that's going to be a voting public in the future. And so our coalition prides ourselves on the understanding that a parent's role is supportive of a child's growth and development, but it doesn't stop there, right? There's a whole community, a whole village of folks that supports the upbringing of children. And referring to the poll, it's important for us to kind of acknowledge that children begin learning at birth, right? It doesn't start in kindergarten, not in first grade. The folks that look after our children from 0 to 5 are supporting them during the most pivotal part of their life. And so for more than a decade, our leaders, both Republicans and Democrats, have prioritized funding for early child care education and more educational opportunities, let's say that. So that includes child care, Pre-K, Head Start, things along that line, especially things like early intervention, which we've been seeing being needed more and more now since we're living in a post-COVID world, right? If that's what we're still trying to call it. And it makes perfect sense that we prioritize funding our youngest learners. Studies have shown that prenatal period and a child's experiences during the first few years shape brain development, and that happens during such a critical moment in their life that it impacts both their short-term and their long-term outcomes in learning, behavior, as well as physical and mental health. And so when our children lead healthy and productive lives, they turn into healthy and productive adults. Those folks are our communities, our workforce, and our economy becomes stronger and more productive when investments are made early. The returns, are great, they're highest, and it reduces the need for interventions that can be more expensive later in life. So despite this impact, tens of thousands of eligible children remain unserved by some of these early care programs, and a lot of it is due to budgetary constraints and hiring. As we wrap up the state budget process and the lawmakers, the goal is June 30th, that's the deadline. We're told it might be a little bit after that, but in years past, it was much further than that, like November last year. And so we're really working hard to make sure that legislators understand that folks like you in the community care about the issue and see childcare as a votable issue. And when I say that, I mean that you will vote for, or we would hope that you would vote for someone that puts childcare centers and childcare at the forefront of their policy making. So to the poll results, the results were quite shocking. There are signs sort of placed throughout the space, but 95% of Pennsylvanians reached the consensus that early education is an important piece of what it takes to lead a healthy life. More amazing is that this level of support is consistent across all age brackets, all education levels, ethnicity, and gender. And there's really no discernible difference between the views of Republicans and Democrats, conservatives or liberals. They're pretty much all in agreement, right? And the same goes for voters in different regions of the state. I hail from Philadelphia, right, southeast, and I know that up here, the issues are very similar, if not exactly the same as some of what I'm hearing.
Can I share a little bit about that? When you
Yeah.
said counties like Philadelphia, Pittsburgh are getting the voice out there in this conversation, but Luzerne County is not. So that was one of the reasons we reached out to say, hey, do you guys care? You know, what does the public care about here, the community care about? I said, we do. But we typically don't get represented in the state. I think we're just kind of on the quiet side and we do our own thing. So she's like, can we have this conversation with the groups? I think that was one of the reasons you wanted to reach out here, because you don't have a big, or Northeast doesn't have a big presence in that general conversation, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so we know that it's just as impactful over here. And so what's important for me as someone who might live in Philadelphia but works for the entire state is to hear from folks in those individual communities. So as the leader of the Child Care Voter Campaign, I go to Luzerne, but I also go to Berks, I go to Erie, I'm going to counties all over the state to make sure that folks over there are also having the opportunity to have their voices elevated. In Philadelphia, there's a lot of talk. It's in the news a lot. Legislators have been very focused in that area, but in a lot of other places, that's not the case. And so, making sure that we're elevating the needs of folks over here, so that our friends in Harrisburg know that it's not just a big city issue. It's not just a rural issue. It's happening everywhere in the state, and parents are struggling, providers are struggling, everyone's really struggling, and these poll results mass throughout the state. So there's over 700 results that these were all conducted through the phone. And so digging into the numbers a little bit more, 70% of voters supported increased investments in state-funded pre-K programs. So that's like pre-K counts and Head Start for eligible children. And this is partially relevant because 87,000 eligible children are not being served in this state. And our legislators don't necessarily see the impact on the ground when they hear a number like that. They're not hearing so much the parents that need help and can't find it. I know there are folks here that help get parents into the system and help them navigate how complicated it is to find childcare for 5 days a week when they're working 40 hours. But we know that it's so imperative that those parents get that support, because if their children are not being taken care of during the day, then we're seeing a workforce issue as well. So few issues have united folks on both sides of the party in Pennsylvania, like early care and education. So that's why we're here to elevate it as something that's incredibly pivotal to folks everywhere. And it's for good reason, because we're talking about our most precious resource, right? Our future, our children, and Pennsylvania voters are overwhelmingly in support of increased investment in this. And so we hope that the poll results will convince Governor Shapiro, as well as all members of the General Assembly, to respond to this level of voter support in growing the Commonwealth's investment in childcare and early childcare education, as well as teacher retention and recruitment. And so I would love to sort of pause and connect the polling results to why we're here today. And I have my computer out because I also have what I think is really cool little activity. If folks have a cell phone on them, it would be really helpful for them to take it out. I'm going to show you something really quickly and ask a single question so that we can sort of visualize the issue as a group, and then come together to have more of a conversation. It won't be me kind of talking at you. So I would like to share this with you. So there's a QR code here, and I'll pass it around, but I will also say that if you go to Menti, that's MENTI.com, and then enter in the user code above, which I will say in like a second, because I know it'll take a sec for folks to get there, Menti.com, or scan the QR code, it will open up a field where you can add a single word. And I want everyone here, I'll do one too, add a word that to answer the question, what do you think is the biggest issue facing childcare sector today? And those words will start to populate on the screen here, and we'll be able to see the more people that say staffing, for example, that word will become bigger and bigger. And I would like to have this like word cloud is what it's called, to take away with us at the end of the day. And I'll make sure that everyone will get a copy of it so that we can continue to have this conversation with our colleagues, with other supporters in the community. And so I will sort of, I don't know, put it a little closer. The code is 1546096. So that's 1546096. And this is the first time I'm doing this, but I love the visual aspect of it, and I like the idea of coming back to it in the future. If I have this conversation with another group of people and they say a completely different set of words or things yeah, I know, it's really small.
And I was like, do you have a projector? And I was like, that's why I called you earlier. Check. Look, you got the computer.
So
I know, we do.
So I'll give folks like a second to like add a word or a phrase or take a look at some of the polling results, see if there are any questions that come up. But that's sort of the end of my spiel about the polls, and I would really like us now to have more of a conversation where we're all talking, not just about the polls, but about some of the innovative practices that we see in the community, things that work, things that don't work, as well as, you know, some of the issues that are popping up for us here.
Do you think it's okay if we just go around and just introduce ourselves and kind of what perspective we can add to the conversation?
Absolutely. That'd be a great way to start.
Oh, Katie, you want to start?
Cool, thanks, Reed. So I'm Katie, and I, with what I do in my role within the company is I help onboard new families with admissions, and the biggest, thing that I think that Samantha and I, we work together. So the biggest thing that we see is just tuition costs in general, and the fact of that, some people just miss that cutoff of, funding for subsidized funding. And so, they can't necessarily, they don't qualify for that, but then they can't afford, the full-time rate. Sometimes they can't even afford to pay the part-time rate, and then we deal with pre-K counts as well with our field. And again, it's the same scenario, and everybody just, they love the program, they want to be in the program, they hear all these great things, and so we would love to find some sort of a way to kind of help all of those families, because we want everybody to come to our program. We love it, and even as a parent, I hear it, in just like passing, when I'm dropping my son off at school or picking him up, and just to find a voice, basically, to see like how can we help, and get everybody in, so that way we could continue to support, everybody in the community within the county, because we just see it across the board. It's not even just like within the Wilkes-Barre area. Like, I live out in the Back Mountain, and we still see families that, like I said, they don't qualify for certain things and they struggle, but everybody has to work, so even if they have to work from home, they can't have their child home with them all day long, so I just feel like a lot of these kids are just missing out on that good quality education that they rightfully deserve because of just like lack of funding.
Actually, just to jump on that,
Yeah.
I spoke to someone last week who was getting promoted in her job in the hospital, but she actually had to turn down the promotion and take it in name only. Yeah, because it would put her above the.
Yeah, we see that a lot. We do. We see that a lot.
That's the first thing I heard.
Is that crazy?
It's like you can't progress professionally because
Right.
healthcare is not affordable enough.
Right. Yep.
I'm Lake. I oversee our business operations, and I feel like I could point out every issue, but I think for me, I think our industry struggles with quality because of affordability. I was walking over with Zach and he was like, hey, what's this about today? And I kind of explained it to him, but we were talking about how, there's a lot of working families and they can't afford to pay anymore. So as an organization, we're trying to be creative of where do we get more funding to pay our teachers because they're going back to school. We're trying to produce quality by continuing ed, but at the same time, these teachers, we can't give them enough to support the life that they want to have or vice versa. So I think our industry has a hard time struggling with how do we continue to produce quality at a rate that, our industry is expected to have it, right? But how do we afford it from a back end? Because we have to have all these trainings and certifications and quality, but pay your teacher $12 an hour. So I think there's a huge disconnect that we have to start connecting that, hey, things come at a cost. And with that, making parents choose, what I see a lot of our colleagues, and Katie and I were talking about it, that they won't choose us because of cost. They'll go somewhere where it's just watching the children in one room because it's $150 a week. But with us, they're getting, a bachelor's degree certified teacher, and they're in an academic program, and we have structure, and they're getting a great meal. But a parent has to make a tough choice where, I think there's a balance that we have to find, because we are constantly looking at continuous ways that how can we produce quality, but that comes at a cost. And, I think we've been creative, but we're saying how do we continue to be creative? But the only way we do that is tuition increases. And then we're coming to a point this year, we didn't raise, this was the first year, I think in probably about 5 or 6 years, we didn't raise tuition this last year because we knew it was going to be a financial burden on the family. So how do we, but everyone got a raise the last year, and everyone is, healthcare insurance went up and rents go up, but how do we balance that going forward? So I think a lot of centers struggle with that. A lot of our colleagues are smaller schools, and they can't figure out a way to retain the quality of teachers. They're just hiring people just to hire them to watch their children. So I think the constant struggle of quality is
What if there's funding, right? We always say if there's funding to help bridge the gap of paying the difference for employees. Like if I can only pay $10, but the government subsidizes and pays the extra $2, it could help. I think there's funding now for parents. There's funding to go into pre-K, and START has funding. And teachers have different kind of funding from going into education and pursuing their education, furthering it. But how do private industries that are running these childcare programs have something? I think if there's some funding that's going towards there, I get the statistics and it's showing how important it is. I think we just have to have a stronger voice to make that, the state recognize that this is a service industry, but it's also falling under the education bracket. So how do we support it? And I think that would help subsidize some of the cost if we get the state to help.
We just had that client reach out to us yesterday about the main reason why she withdrew was because of tuition costs, and she's you got that email, she's just very
She said she went
disappointed.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because it was cheaper, and her child fell behind.
Yep.
Because
Oh, that's
it's not a
great.
quality childcare program, and she has to make a financial decision based on just their finance cost, but it impacted her child's growth and
Correct.
well-being. So she said she kind of humbly came to us.
Yep.
And she
what
was
we-
like, what
and then
can we
but
do?
again,
Yeah.
we did a personal scholarship for this family
Yeah.
to help bring them back because we knew that child was getting disadvantaged. So we were like, hey, I was like, hey, Zmin, can we fill out this scholarship application? And we waived $40 a week per week so that child can get a better care. But we as a private provider have to make that tough decision of
Right.
where that funding is coming from. Where again, we want to help all of our families, our goal, but I said it's, for some reason, it's us having to sit at the table to say, how do we use our own funding to help support families, which,
Yeah.
that's fine, we have some of an obligation being an organization to do that, but we have to help we give probably about $280,000 a year in private scholarships away that could go to maybe paying a teacher more than $15 an hour. So I think this last year we've seen a lot of movement, but how can we have more movement in that trajectory?
And parents' costs are anywhere from $300 a week, so that's $1,200 to $1,500 if they have one child a month. So that's huge. But again, there's that borderline that they fall above or under with ELRC funding, which is an
Correct.
amazing funding already.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that helps subsidize costs for so many families. But the middle-class
The middle
families,
class.
both parents are working, sometimes they have a weekend job, they just don't cut it. And sometimes, and it's sad that as human beings that parent, whether it's mother or father, have to sacrifice their professional growth because they have to stay home. If you make that choice, that's fine, but if you have to make that choice because, hey, I'm gonna get $1,500 in a cash payment, I mean, my employee paycheck that I just gotta pay back to childcare, why don't I just stay home? But then you don't pursue and develop. So it is something I think we have to flip the coin of letting just the voters and the parents recognize that it is an issue to be talked about because they in the end are being impacted. And I don't think parents view this as a service they can talk about. They just think it's an expected thing. You know, there's McDonald's, so it's just a private industry. They're just going to pay for it. But I think we have to do a stronger job making them recognize that there's so many families, so many childcare programs. If they all stood up and spoke, then the political system would look at it. But they're not. They're just kind of a bystander and not making a voice. Even on the college level, I don't think parents speak up. So I'm hoping conversation can just keep milling around that parents, we always say, I think I was telling Whitney when she called them, like, we don't take a political stance. Like, I don't want to be involved. Like, it's not left or right. But we do believe in awareness and getting parents involved. And we haven't broached our parents in the sense of educating them on how they have a voice because we want to be very cautious in how we do that because we don't want to make it a political issue. It's more, it's an issue for families to view it as something that they can make an impact on. They recognize that they can have a voice in it to change the narrative of it. So, Lindsay, did you want to share?
I know. I thought we were going
I know
around.
you see it from a different
It's
perspective.
good conversation. No, I mean, I'm Lindsay Griffin Boylan, so president of the Wyoming Valley Chamber here in downtown Wilkes-Barre. But I've been working with Blake and Zubin for a long time, and really one of the big reasons, we were always talking about a downtown facility because I think, definitely post-pandemic, we saw a huge need for quality childcare in the downtown. A lot of our other childcare facilities, definitely same struggles, by the way. I mean, it's challenge with, just workforce has been one of the biggest challenges, and just the turnover and being able to keep up with capacity to get people back to work was a huge challenge. We saw a lot of women leaving the workforce specifically because of that. So I think that we were, it's something that we continue to talk about. I mean, I think on a positive note from sort of my other chamber partners in this area is that we did identify like a legislative agenda. We do that every year. Childcare is one of our priorities this year collectively. And so something we just kind of all established, and I think now for us it's like, what does that mean? So what are we specifically doing? So could be a cool, alignment of what that looks like because, that's, we sort of look at all the different things and there's a few that we always agree this is affecting all of our communities. So there are actually a couple of efforts going on that I can tell more on the chamber side of things in the state that are going on already that are sort of getting a little bit of momentum. And more so on the advocating for essentially some sort of, sort of making up that gap if we're looking at the teacher costs of how are we making up a subsidy to be able to do that. Is that something we could collectively voice and approve on the legislative level? So I think sort of right in line with, what we're all talking about today. But, I think that especially Luzerne County, I've always said, and, coming into my role about, starting at the chamber about 8 years ago was that, we definitely in Luzerne County have always had a lower, education rate. We have, our poverty rate has always been well below state, let alone national averages. And it's always kind of one of those things where it's like, we do have significant funding coming in some ways. So where are gaps and what are we missing the mark on? And, I think that's why we, as a chamber, 3 years ago, put in quality of life as a pillar because we knew that if we don't start there, we're not going to have the business climate we want. And businesses and families aren't going to come here and move here and stay here. So it's something that I think we're very, invested in. I think that if there's something that we could do on the level of, through our Chamber of Commerce division, our C6, that's our advocacy side. So that's where we can go ahead and say these are the things that are important and we can help to, be a voice of, the region in that way and see, how we can help convene conversations with our legislators, but also on that larger level. So, I think we're seeing it, consistently. We talk with all of our partners. We know it's a challenge, and I think now it's figuring out how we can help to really address those gaps and have a stronger voice. And I think that's why we've been trying to come together collectively more as a region so that we can, have bigger impact when we're going to the state and advocating for those things. So,
could you share? I know you're doing a lot under the umbrella of education. on like Project Elevate and how it's kind of going into high schools and how you're working to create the workforce. Do you want to share a little bit? Because even though that's not specifically childcare, it's education and how you're empowering the students, I think it's important to see. So there's some of the solutions that we were talking about that I think the governor, I know you talked to the governor and you share that, but it's so important for them to know that, yeah, these are the issues, but here's a community working on the solutions for it.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's something we've been all chatting about for years and sort of, coming to fruition with that model of like the cradle to career to community, and really us seeing that, we tried to Band-Aid sort of workforce, sort of, especially right out of COVID, but how do we build up that sustainable pipeline? We certainly as a chamber aren't going to manage that whole life cycle because we have wonderful partners that are doing that. So how do we align with our early childhood partners, building blocks? This is something we've been chatting about for years, but through the K through 12 life cycle, Susan couldn't be here from Junior Achievement is a great partner. So taking all these pieces up to the point where they're high school students, and that's where we come in. We can come in as a chamber. We have an online portal that we've established that is focused on Luzerne County. It's called Luzerne Learns to Work, where kids take an assessment, they find out what their skill set is, what's here in Luzerne County, and we tell them exactly how to get there. So if it's trades, if it's going to a higher ed, so everything is linked on there. So it really just shows kids like, if I go into this is a job I'm going to get, or I can come right out and get a job, and this person will train me. So I think we're trying to bridge that gap between, a lot of our employers now are paying for people to go back to school or training them while they're there, and a lot of our kids, again, because we're serving, Luzerne County 12 public schools, I'd say only, 80% are going to be below the poverty line. So I mean, we're dealing with kids where sometimes they're not getting that sort of education at home. Now schools are very challenged with teachers themselves. We know that we're in a complete teacher crisis in a lot of our schools, let alone guidance counselors and career counselors. So we wanted to really be able to come in and say, we want to put this in the schools, be really hands-on with the kids to show them these pathways. So that system is a really cool one. It offers them over 20,000 courses online for free. And they can access it right in school, which is great. Obviously, they can also access it at home if they have that, but we wanted it to be in school so every kid had access. So, and the kids can scholarship out of that, so they can essentially go on to get continuing education and tell us about their pathway. But I think it's all a big piece of that, because we know that if they don't start strong at that early age, that, really, we know that by the time it's 11th or 12th grade, it's way too late. But we wanted to make sure that's our piece of the puzzle, so we're connecting those students, but we know that the alignment starts when they're, learn that from working a lot with student and but literally when they're 5 or 6 years old is when we're starting to see them develop. So I think our goal is that, kind of call it, Project Elevate, this whole cradle to career to community model, where we have all partners in the community that are building that pipeline, and then feeds into us, we get them into these positions, hopefully into a career in the area, we get them community involved, and we're building like that future generation of leaders, but they have that strong base. So that's the, the current part of it. 11th and 12th grade piece is already piloting, it's in schools. It's going to grow next year, which is really exciting. But that's going to be the full alignment, is that it's going to start with those partners, and why we're going to have a building really right on this block. So we're by all of our partners here, and that we have this like ecosystem that they're accessing all this at a super early age. So I think it's more important than ever that we get, kids into that right pathway and help them get into programs that are quality and that are going to provide these kinds of resources, because we just frankly know that if we don't, it doesn't, our stats show it doesn't work. So yeah, so that's what, yep, so that's our, and it's a huge collaboration. It's not just us, it's everybody that's working in all these different fields that is coming together. Wilkes is a partner in that, or in the higher ed level, where we have all the curriculum, linked there. If this is your skill set, how you can go on to continue it right here, and how you can get a position right out of school. And so it's a really cool collaboration of anybody, frankly, that works in workforce and development. So we're excited about it. We have a lot of good people in the area that are focused on it. I think it's just getting that out there in more collective ways. Yeah. We're going to trademark it.
Yeah.
We still have to work on that.
Yeah. Blake, do you want to share?
My name's Blake, and I work in the provost's office at Wilkes, and that office is in charge of all of the academic programs at the university. So I think of three things, like I'm thinking of three hats that I wear. One is, first and foremost, as a mom, period. The biggest critical moment of my life 27 years ago was trying to figure out how you continue to have a profession and excel in your profession and do right by your children. so it's.
Did you
it's a-
figure that out?
I have not, but I can tell you that's what's making my stomach tight right now. And not only from your own guilt, but the reality of affordability is a real thing. So that's what I wrote about. The other thing, so as a scholar, one of the areas that I mainly focus on is equity and inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is an issue from my eyes of systemic oppression, right? So historically marginalized populations based on class and socioeconomic status will continue to stay oppressed. My kids now, if I had a grandchild, I guess, I can afford the tuition. I couldn't at one time. So our community continues to be oppressed. So as a scholar, I'm concerned about that, right? I feel like, but the people with the power are not the people being oppressed, right? So that's a challenge. And then third, at Wilkes, in my role, I try and look for opportunities to make connections. And I will tell you, I mean, everybody around this table knows this organization is able to make the connections between the various programs, services, opportunities, people, and pull people together to make it work. That's a model that as a Commonwealth we could embrace, because there's pockets of this help, pockets of that help, but it's not all brought together. So I think doing things like this, and this organization consistently ties together the pieces, which I think is special. From my last role professionally, I'm very excited to partner with students who want to go into this as a profession, to be able to see a center that looks like this, that runs like this, that is very professional and based on theory and knowledge and great performance from teachers is extraordinary. It's not watching 10 kids for $100 less than that. So it's really remarkable. We work pretty actively to route students through programs where they attend the community college and then come to us, because that's more affordable. It's a much better solution. And I'm excited for our students to be able to push into the center. I actually have a child, my child is here working, and she struggled as a student. Please don't tell her something. I don't know how to write this lesson plan because she had no experience. And now she's in a classroom and has the experience and can scaffold what that means. What's that theoretical approach and what does that look like? So to give that opportunity to our students is remarkable. So I think we as a community owe future generations the advocacy to make a difference, because opportunity is lost and it's lost quickly. And there's a gap that's widened between the haves and have-nots. But if you're a legislator and it doesn't matter to you, then we need to make it matter to them.
Hi everybody, I'm Lori. I get to work with Blake a lot. I work in the Doctor of Education program at Wilkes, and I was trying to think about, what do I contribute to this conversation? And I was thinking, as other people were sharing, how long have I been an educator? And sad to say, it's actually been 30 years, this month that I have been an educator. And my husband was in the military, and so we got to move to many different places and got to experience different teaching opportunities for me. I'm going to frame it very positively like that. Different certification in every state we went to, different testing, different, requirements and so on. But the beauty of all of that was that I got to teach at different levels, right? So I've taught toddlers, I've taught in elementary school, I've taught adults, and I have to say the most rewarding position that I've ever had was teaching those young ones. I did that for I can't say it's the majority now, but it used to be the majority of my time teaching was in early care and education. It was not in elementary school, it was not in higher ed. And while I found that to be the most rewarding position ever, it was also the least appreciated by the public. I found myself justifying what I was doing constantly. The pay that I was receiving was abhorrent. And I scrubbed my own toilet at the end of every day. I cleaned all of our toys, and I did all of it with a master's degree and a smile on my face. So, and that's just one person representing all the other people who are in this building and in others who are doing the very same thing. So it's time for us to consider how we are structuring our school systems, because learning doesn't begin at 5. We know that from everything you were just saying. And even preparation for kindergarten is not what happens here. What happens here is preparation for life. And the life skills that are learned within these walls and in homes all over. But it really breaks my heart to think that families have to make the decision whether or not to have access because of cost, and my heart aches for those who work in the profession and don't feel as though they are treated as the professionals that they are. We all know that education has a bad rap no matter what level you're in, but I think that they are receiving the worst of it. So that is something that I would like to see changed as well.
Hello. I'm Liz. I'm a mom to a 20-month-old, so super fun. And I'm also in administration and early childhood. And it's funny how you said kind of justifying it. I have, many a friend who we had, children all around the same time that are not working because they couldn't afford it. And many of them who looked at me and said, well, I don't know why you're sending her. My daughter started in a center at 9 weeks old. She went when she was full-time. She was there 5 days a week. So I could go back to work, and they were all like, I don't know why you don't just stay home. I don't know why you don't stay home. She knows 8 words in sign language. She knows her colors. She knows letters. And not even that. She knows to take deep, calming breaths. I don't even take deep, calming breaths. When she has a toddler meltdown, the last thing she wants to do is take a deep, calming breath, but she'll do her balloon breathing. And we'll go to the park and I'll see the difference, and it's not I'm sending my kid to a daycare. I'm not just sending her, and it's education. That is the most valuable thing that I can give to my daughter, is that education, that path. There's nothing. If I had to work 4 jobs to send her, I would work 4 jobs to send her, because that is the most important thing. And it's kind of sad almost that there are so many people that are, my age they don't see that it's important. They don't see that it's so necessary. We were talking about like the packets to go into kindergarten. They're thick. It's a lot of things that they have to know how to do. How can you expect just 1 year of pre-K? Yes, it's so important and so wonderful, but all of that knowledge from infant to 4, from 4 to 5, how do you fit all that in when you can start the path all the way in the beginning? So it's just, advocating for everyone that I know, that I hear, having those conversations of, hey, it's not a daycare. She's going to school. She is going for her education, and it's starting now. It was 9 weeks old. She was learning. They were singing songs to her. She was recognizing and seeing all those things. She knows more words in sign language than I do. I don't even know that many things. So it's just, it was funny how you said that, that I shouldn't have to justify why I sent her. She loves it. She runs in there. She says, see you later, Mom. I gotta go. And she loves to be there. And she's learning, and she doesn't even know that she's learning. She's just having a good time.
I think that's interesting, Liz, because I have a lot of friends who still don't send their child to childcare because, well, they're home with my mom. They're never going to get that time back.
Nope.
And I want to look at them and be like, but also
And there's value being with your
is.
grandparents in your extended care.
But
So
I
do
see the
believe there's
difference
value.
with going to school, though,
Yeah.
and I think we've seen that when we sat with kindergarten teachers. We had a study done for students who were feeding into one of the local districts. Our students were 18% more ready for kindergarten than another child going into childcare, another child care being served. But also, kids that were going into the school that just had no formal childcare were like way below. Which, we talk about anxiety, children being set up. All those things are so important for a child to be well-rounded. So being with them and being able to socialize and get the fundamentals built at a young age can only set them up for success.
Even as a parent, you read all the books, you learn all the things, and then someone hands you a little baby and you're like, I didn't read a single thing in 9 months. I don't know what to do. There's so much that even they've taught me, hey, try this technique, try that technique. We're working on this, try incorporating that at home. I couldn't do that on my own. I wouldn't know where to look. I wouldn't know where to go. My mom certainly wouldn't know where to look, wouldn't know where to go. but even as much as it's educating her, it's educating me along the way. And I don't know how you could put a number on that. It's the most valuable thing in the world.
I think there's a disconnect, right? Again, we always talk about the shootings that are going on and the crazy that goes on in the upper grades. It's because they're socially, emotionally not ready. And the skill set's not developed of how they can de-escalate themselves. And the small thing as calming down and breathing is one of the biggest skills that human beings lack in our high schools now. They don't know how to self-regulate because they have the phone or they were disconnected. So I think going back to the study and going back to the state understanding the value of education, I think, again, parents need to be even educated because, you know, you said it from a core place of a parent, but I think you're surrounded by the education field. But I think when we pull random parents, they don't understand and value education. And they think, oh, it's just childcare, I just need to go to work. But to realize that the value that we put into instill in children by socially, emotionally getting them ready, they're only going to be successful adults. But I think the state representatives that sit there, because Lake and I went to Harrisburg, had fun conversations with a lot of the senators that were just really dismissive in our conversation, you know, and we decided not to go. Our goal is not to prove to
We
them.
left early.
Yeah, we left
I was like, I'm not gonna talk to this guy. Yeah, like he doesn't even see what we're saying. He's like,
there's
he
no
doesn't even-
respect.
No, there was
There's
no
value.
respect for our industry.
So we thought instead of going against the grain, we're going to work next to it. Because I think we can get further by not trying to convince somebody what the value is, but work in small community and work with great partners to say, wait, we can create our own infrastructure and bring awareness. But I think there is a disconnect for people sitting, not everybody. So there are some great leaders out there that understand and value it, but they are stuck in the political system. So let's not fight that. I think let's bring parents up to speed because then it will be fair and equal because we're trying to go here, but the parents are not getting involved. So I think we're trying to figure out how do we become the voice, especially in the community here. How do we start educating? And we're working with other child care partners and education facilities to see how do we bridge those gaps so more people can become aware about the importance of education as a whole umbrella. So
And
make a
even
difference.
so, as you're talking, I thought about like the core belief that I'm a capable learner, right? Like, you can't. That is when it is developed, and that really dictates who's going into what types of fields, and you can't measure it, but it's critical.
It's funny, I think about, I was never in the daycare or in a childcare. I didn't even do pre-K. My parents sent me right to kindergarten. And sometimes even now, like at 30, I think like, what did I miss? Like, could I have used that a little bit?
Master's degree. What else did you
Well, you never know.
Like, oh, pick my doctor.
Could I have helped a little bit?
Yeah.
Like if I had little struggles, maybe it wouldn't have happened as much. Like it was just little things. Like I think about, I can't change the past. But
you change your future.
I think about it, correct. She
Right,
was
yeah.
in there. I was doing that tour. She was going regardless. She was, see you later, girl. You're going.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Zach. I'm the head of the marketing department here at Building Blocks.
Your future parent.
Okay. I'm,
Just kidding.
I was gonna say congratulations.
It was just his birthday yesterday. Something happened.
but I was, as you were saying, like what to contribute. I've been here 90 days. I don't have any kids.
You seem surprised.
Like, I was something.
But I'm a product of a Montessori school, so I have the exact opposite thoughts that, like, you know, as what would have happened if I didn't go, you know. So I have spent the last 90 days here sort of observing and trying to gather all of the information and see how the industry runs and develop my own perspective about it. And one of the biggest things is that we just talked about it in my 90 days. We stay a lot after work and work till 6, 7 o'clock at night.
8, 9.
8, 9 at night. But I mean,
This happened.
I mean, and it just clicked to me that the teachers aren't done till 5, so we can't even start that till 5. And if you take a day off to have one of those in-services or things like that, you're disrupting every parent's life. So as much as you know, we go back to the wages and things like that. I mean, you're working more than 40 hours a week, every week. I mean, and it's something that I never would have thought of, you know, and it's, you don't
So
see.
you're from like the corporate world, so you
Right,
don't understand
exactly.
like how do teachers and what they go through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even being here, it took a minute to catch on to. I mean,
You're like, why can't we meet at 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
They're in ratio.
But I think you hit a really good point, right? So we want to attract this professional, we want to get an educated teacher to come into the industry, but we also want them to work 55 hours a week, and we want them to be training at night. And you know, we've seen teacher burnout more than ever in this last year. You know, or because of we have to continuously try to improve quality, but we have teachers that are like, hey, it's just a lot. Like I have parents yelling at me. I have to do these 5 things before I go home. I have to clean the toilet, but I have to stay till 8 o'clock at night and stay for a staff meeting because we can't have it in the middle of the day because teachers have to be counted in ratio. So I think you hit a really good point that how do we want to improve quality, and we want to have this lifestyle. We want to attract teachers into this industry, and they want to be treated like professionals. But across the street, people are working from home and getting double their salary. How do we attract that?
But it was hard, right? Because we decided this semester, I think we're closing a couple of days at 4 o'clock. Because we were like, oh, let's close at 4 so we can have a great time a better time to do a staff meeting. But then it impacts the parent and their job. And the parents don't recognize that, wait, they are in ratio, they can't meet until the end of night. So then what happened is teacher is burned out and they come back the next day to be with their child. So it's just going back to parent awareness of, does the public know, do the parents know, do the citizens know the value of education and the impact of education?
And employers being understanding too that, hey, there's child care centers that need that flexibility. We understand you need workers, but at the same time, how do we build a community that's understanding and forgiving
And synergistic.
because we've learned that we can't change. People have to work, and we have to be. Our job is to be a service industry to families. Like we always talk about that from a family services side of things, that we can never stop being a service because that's part of the quality of what we do. But I think there needs to be, like Sabine said, is we have to create awareness of our industry, of who we are, and identify. I think our industry is a huge identity crisis. We talk about it quite regularly. Like, some of our most educated colleagues still call us a daycare. Like, I cringe. We have a consultant that she was talking to, she posted, daycare centers need help. I'm like, why did you post it that way? Like, you know, never to call it a daycare center, but
And
I
she
think
did it
we have-
nationally.
Yeah, she said it on
She was on CNN. I'm like,
Yeah.
change the narrative.
So cringy.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, I cringed when she said it. But for us, we were saying, how do we get everybody involved, and how do we build that community? So we all kind of work together, and it's like, hey, your child care center is closing. Yes, no problem. Go ahead. We understand that quality education is important on all levels, right? So.
My name is Morgan. Something that I was thinking about when I was talking was I went to a conference at the Chambers. I'll kind of bring it full circle. And it was the keynote speaker was talking about the day the horse died, basically summarizing it in that when the cars came and took over for horses, no one could have fathomed what jobs would have come from that. So you either got on board or you left the profession. And no one could have imagined, you were dealing with rubbers, mechanics, whatever it was. And the point is that we're in that mindset right now when it comes to technology and AI. Point being, we cannot even fathom the jobs that the kids right now are going to have because they haven't been invented yet. With technology and AI, it's growing so fast. And so what people are saying is that we can't teach what we don't know. Like, we don't know what these professions are going to be. What we can teach are problem solving, communication skills, self-regulation, all of those core skills that are built during those 0 to 5 years. And those skills are built, those are studies, decades-long, 60-year studies that those skills in a person are formed in those first 0 to 5 years. So if that doesn't say like how important the work that we do is, I don't know what it is, because we are building the successful people of the next generation. And so I'm just really passionate about bringing that awareness and that respect I know I told like one of my biggest like feathers in my cap right now was we're working with someone at a CTC program that changed their sign from daycare to childcare. And it was just like really, yes. So like one little step at a time, bringing the elevation to the industry. I work with a lot of interns in high school and colleges, and a lot of them, when you ask them, what do you want to do in education? They say, you know, elementary is the youngest. No one thinks about those early childhood years because that's babysitting. And that is so not what we do. So when they come in and they're like, oh my God, like this could be a job, that's the spark, that's the reason. Or we work with students at Wilkes or King's, and they have to take so many classes at early childcare, and they're like, I don't want to do this, I want to be a high school teacher, but they come out of it with a little bit more respect for the industry. And that, I think, I mean, even if they don't want to go into it, just that respect and understanding of how important the work we do is, you know, success.
And a lot of those experiences that our students get to have, and I'm speaking from an ignorant perspective because I don't get to work with pre-service teachers anymore, but a lot of times they come into an early care and education setting for field hours, but not for student teaching. And the problem with that is that it gives the impression that this is a great place to check out.
Well, I took the class about 10 years ago. I was taking an app development class and in Apple, and by the time the class started, the class was out of date. And I mean, it's still fundamentals and things like that, and I understand that, but they put out the new software before the class started, and then I was like, why am I even? You know, but it's every year, and you're developing your lesson plans a year ahead of time, but it's moving that fast.
But the soft skills, going back to emotional, social development, and again, parents recognizing that is so critical for children and for their success. So, did you guys want to share anything? I know you said by 4:30, so I'm just trying to stick to that.
I'm Samantha. I also work with Katie as well in the admissions and public services department. So, you know, we see a lot of parents who need help with funding, as you said, and just, you know, recognizing the need for quality education, which as a first-time parent myself, you know, coming into, you know, bringing my son to school for the first time, much like Liz, you know, who is 6 months old and is attending one of our schools up until this point in time. So, you know, it's amazing to see just developmentally the strides he's taken and the milestones that he has met. And I will continuously say it because I do represent a demographic of a single parent. So I'm a single household income, single parent, that, you know, I wouldn't have the opportunity to teach him everything that he learns currently, you know, at the toddler level and moving forward. There's just no way, while having a professional career and just, you know, continuing to develop that and obviously having to work because that's the nature of it. So it's amazing to see, and I don't believe that oftentimes, you know, our communities are educated in that aspect, just recognizing, you know, what quality care and the education portion is, you know, at the younger level. I also represent the demographic of the Hazleton area as well, which is extremely diverse. That's my immediate community, this being my community as well. But, you know, parents out there, we also have a school in that area too. Just, you know, they are the workforce that needs the extended hours because it's heavily driven on factory settings, you know, Humboldt and Valmont, which if you want that community to thrive, people need to work these extended hours. So sometimes we see our children going to, you know, our school there, the 7 o'clock in the morning till 5:30 at night, you know, so these extended hours that the children are in care, obviously the quality of education is huge in these demographic areas where parents need all of the hours that they can get.
There's not enough care in those areas.
Absolutely, and there is not enough
we have
care.
a wait list out. You know,
Certainly,
yeah.
we absolutely do. It's very eye-opening. You know, and has been very eye-opening, and I think will continue to be. But it's just really getting that out there to community members who maybe don't have that understanding because they, for whatever reason, you know, have a hard time stepping in your shoes or whatever it may be. So just, you know, really voicing it. And
But I think there's a flip narrative that gets posted, right? We see it where in the news and in the media, it's childcare centers are closing down, not enough staffing. But we don't share it. There's a high demand and wait list because
Right,
people.
high demand,
So
yes.
I think sometimes it's framed in a way that I think makes us view childcare in a different way. That I think we flipped the script and said, oh my gosh, there's not enough, programs, quality programs. What can we do? Maybe more attention would be paid towards,
I couldn't tell you the last time I saw like a positive story about
Yeah.
early childhood. It's all-
Well, that's why we're working on Catch the Magic. It's bringing awareness. I know Carrie's working with us on, we are not talking positively about education in the field of education, that can we flip the script and start showing, hey, educators are going there because there's a passion and they want to go in there. It's not for the money. And then what are community stakeholders doing to make that? So I think if more of that kind of churns out there, we're hoping parents see that positivity and maybe change, kind of the momentum of it. So.
Yes.
I'd also,
I'm sorry, I was just going to say that's part of why I really appreciate the invitation to come here, because of all of the work that you're doing with the community and the local schools and everything. So definitely hearing that and wish that that was a little bit more robust throughout the rest of the state as well.
Okay, well, I'm Ryan. I work in the finance department at Building Blocks, and I am not from here. I moved here about 8 months ago, and just to kind of piggyback on what you just said about working with the community, I just want to say it's really nice to see people who care so much. I'm from Arkansas. We are 49th in education. Thank you, Mississippi. Right? Thank you for Mississippi. And these numbers are really refreshing to see that people actually care. So, yeah, it's not a big topic there. My parents were very pro school. I was going to school. We call it Miss Debbie. I was about 6 months old when I started, and I've been very into school ever since. I'm still in school. So it was in my house. It was very important. My parents are high school graduates, but they were very focused on me going to school. So yeah, that's all. I just wanted to say that it's very nice to see this level of care. And as an accountant, I could go work anywhere, but it's nice to work somewhere that cares.
Yes. I'm Karen Miscavige. I'm the publisher of the Times Leader, which is the newspaper company here in Wilkes-Barre for over 116 years. And this all sounds like another newspaper series. There's obviously a lack of education in the community about early learning. And I see that through all the conversations today. Even myself, I picked up several things that you guys were talking about. And I even see it with, friends that are parents that don't realize that sending a child to an early learning center like Building Blocks is vital to their early learning and education. Even folks that are well educated themselves are making those decisions for their children that aren't in the best interest. So I think there's a lot of things that we all have talked about today that, again, with newspapers and our mouthpiece, you have to repeat things over and over and over again. One article doesn't do anything. It can do some things for some people, but it's the repetition over and over and over. So, I really see this as being a continued conversation through our mouthpiece, our newspaper, our website. I'm here to support you all and whatever that you need and however you want to get the information out. We connect a lot with lawmakers on hundreds of subject matters. And we have people in-house that call and say, okay, what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on this? What's this? What's that? And that's what we do almost on a weekly basis on certain topics. So I'd be glad to get the ball rolling with some of that. It's wonderful. I'd like to continue the conversation that we're having here with our team so we can get this out there.
I think you've
it's
been
that
really
important.
a strong person to lead the Times later on just issues and talking about just, what do you call it, the solutions for it. I know you're working with mental health as well, right, with the teens. So I think you've taken an active role, just not publishing a story for a story. I think there's a lot of heart in it. So I appreciate you joining us in the conversation. It wasn't to get publicity, it's because I think your heart is looking out for the greater welfare of, community itself.
Well,
So.
for us, I mean, we need to focus on things that are important to the region for longevity, and that means aligning our goals with the same with the community. And we've already indicated that, focusing on children's health, well-being, education is all part of what we need to continue to cover, and have someone specifically working on those subjects. It's that important. It's as important as covering the county for government, and it's important of covering the crimes in the courts that we have to do. But these children are the future of this area, and like we said, if we're not putting the resources behind it, we'll all be old and gray and retired, and we want to leave this community better than where we found it.
And we'll be complaining about crime and the number of people being arrested or the drug issues, right? Well, this is the solution, right?
Like you said a quote, you said a statement, and I couldn't write it down, but kind of what Carrie's saying, something about as a community we need to advocate, so something like for the future of our community. Something you said, but exactly what you're saying, we might not see the success of it, but we are advocating right now, and all the work we're doing is for the future, for the future generations. But and I know as we were talking, I know as we went around, we were like, well, I'm from building blocks, I'm from building blocks. But we did put out to, I think you personally called, reached out to 4 other childcare providers, and we reached out to 4 of our community childcare providers. So I think everybody on my end, I know on yours, they were interested, they just can't come to it. Whether it's staffing, whether it's the timing. So that's been a little frustrating because we just don't want to be the only voice.
But I think it's important. Everybody was, I think I put it out to our office. It was voluntary for them to come as department heads. The only 2 were family services, but everyone else.
Right.
But I think it's important that we touch about 2,000 people every day as far as families go. And if we're not, aware of what's happening, because we kind of work, staff accountant working in the accounting department, but deals with so much kind of coming in, it's just important to create awareness. So whether, we have a lot of our individuals around our table, but they go out in the community in different ways and can share what we're working on. And I think it's super, super important that we have our team just as much engaged as hopefully the community at some point, and that's kind of our bigger
I value and respect everything that's shared. Yeah.
Yes, thank you all so much for sharing. That's a big reason why I wanted to record this too, because I wanted to make sure that we're sharing this with other people, and for the folks that were not able to make it. Like Zubin said, I reached out to 4 other childcare centers in this area that I've worked with in the past, or that my agency has worked with in the past, and each one of them was like, sorry, we can't break ratio, can't make it. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality, and I think that this team here is really so invested in it, and it's not that they're not invested, but the fact that you all are doing so many innovative programs and really ramped up advocacy for sure. It's really hard for folks to do advocacy on top of all of the other things that you're doing and still working till 8 or 9 o'clock,
Except that.
Except that. It's only been 90 days, so
That's a honeymoon period.
We're Memorial Day, don't worry.
But that's the thing, right? So the state budget, they're still negotiating the state budget. It's supposed to be due in the next 2 weeks or so, but that's, I know, right? But that's just the beginning. So this is just the start of a conversation that I hope that we continue to have until we start to see some of those changes. And like someone mentioned earlier, even if the state isn't willing to invest, it's so good to see communities banding together. And I think that that's really important for folks to see as well.
We appreciate you.
Thank you
so much. I've heard at a conference once that educators are really quick to accept the negative things that happen that are stated in our society, but yet we are so willing to give up the praise to our students because that's who we wish to celebrate, but we're not owning the positive things that are happening because we're giving it away to our students. And so it's one of those things where inherently as educators, we wish to see our students succeed, but we're not owning that positive story. We need that narrative to get out there, and so that's one of the things that we really appreciate about you. Also, thank you.
Thank you. But, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about Child Care Voter just before we all wrap up. And my card's on the table too. I would love to connect with folks outside of today, but some of these books in the middle there, I really do go from like center to center, reading to the children, talking to the teachers, really like hearing from the educators about some of the issues that they're facing, and then the parents when they come to pick up their children, talking to them about some of the issues that they're facing too. It does sometimes feel like a little bit of a seesaw, right? Like, so parents can't afford to pay more, and also the educators really, or the providers are not able to pay their educators more. So it's like, where is the balance? And so there's frustration all around. And so I feel very fortunate to be a part of this community and be able to elevate the voices of folks that are really struggling, and I really hope to see some progress in the future. Something that our coalition has asked for this year is an additional $284 million to support teacher retention and recruitment, specifically going to centers like this one and folks that we all know, to make sure that the professionals that are already in the field are getting those bonuses. They're actually starting to make a little bit more money. It's usually not enough anyway, but a little bit more. Like the sign over there, the starting wage for childcare workers, $10.69. That's about a year and a half old, and it's not average, right? But it's the starting rate for a lot of folks in Pennsylvania. And so raising that awareness, helping folks and community members understand a little bit more about how they can better advocate, how they can raise their voice, and how, as a voter, their voice is so incredibly important to the legislators that are supposed to be making policy that impacts them. So I just feel really honored to be a part of this space and to hear from so many of you. I have so many notes, things that I'm going to just take with me. I would love for you all to take your copy of the polls, just digest it a little bit. Yeah. And for me, what's so important is for folks to know that they're not alone. You know, I'm talking to parents and I ask them about some of their struggles, and you'll see it go into a whisper, and to see them just talk about the second job their husband had to take because they couldn't afford to put their second child in, things like that. And I'm not saying like scream your struggles into the street, but like you're very much not alone. And there's a lot of folks that have a lot of the same issues. And so part of my educational campaign is going around the state and making sure that folks are able to raise their voices. If they can't be here, share it in a video or something like that, so that when I'm talking to legislators, they can put a face to a lot of the issues that we all put on that little word cloud that I'll make sure to circulate. So,
yeah, and I'll send you everybody's email.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and they say it takes a village. I mean, 90% of my village is my child's teachers. They advocate for her just as much as I would.
That's really nice. Liz.
I don't know how I would have gotten through those first couple weeks without it. That is my village. There's really no other people outside of that. Miss Masha and Miss Morgan are out there advocating for my child every single day. That's her village, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know how people would do it without it, because it really does take a whole village. Maybe two, you know.
Well, it's definitely an all of the work that you all are doing here, and I find it very inspiring. I can't wait to share it.
Thank you for advocating.
Thank you everybody for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you.